Jump right in.
So hello and welcome to the Wanderers podcast. So I'm Ian, a singer-songwriter, entrepreneur, and founder of my own music and travel brand, Ian's Tracks. I wanted to create a unique space to showcase and celebrate some of the incredible people that I've met on my travels. So welcome to the Wanderers podcast. Each episode will feature a music industry or creative industry guest, somebody who's doing it very differently in regards to their life and work. So each episode will get into a little bit about how this person started out, some of the struggles that they've faced, some of the adventures they've experienced, and what their plans and hopes are for the future. So, without further ado, let's introduce the very, very first guest to the podcast, which is incredible, Kate Hall. I would give you a drum roll if I knew how to do it, but I could always just bash the computer and see what we went with that. So, Kate Hall is a singer songwriter based in Devon, and over the past 3 years, she's built a full time career in music, with live performance being her primary focus. From the corners of local pubs to festival main stages, Kate has become a familiar name on the Southwest music scene, earning support from BBC Introducing and building a reputation for her heartfelt songwriting and engaging live shows. So, welcome, Kate. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's an honour to be the first guest on the podcast.
I know. And also, I love the fact that you've got your SM58 there. So I feel like
Yeah,
I'm.
this is the very mic that I'm in the pub corners with most of the time.
It's not something you want to shout about, my love. But with Kate, it's a really, really, well, I'd say beautiful story about how we met. But I'm going to just sort of start off by going, shall we?
Jump right in.
So
Let's do it.
let's do it. So, in terms of like how we first met, I think it would just be so funny to because your story and your sort of adventure into what you're doing kind of for me starts really for when we met each other. So we're kind of jumping right into chapter 5 maybe of like a story. But
Mm.
we could picture this. It's the heat of the summer. I'm off with my backpack going across Lake Garda, and just sort of checked into the hostel that I was staying at and wanted to go outside, get some fresh air, have a little glass of something toxic. And as the door swings open, this little beautiful creature emerges with her journal. And there's just this kind of instant connection, which is really, really beautiful. So, of course, that's you. And
Mm.
what I love is that the first moment I meet you, you've got your journal with you.
Yeah, and that became quite a catalyst for our friendship, I think,
Mm,
because I was on my first proper solo trip,
yeah.
and so I'd made my journal a daily habit, and
Mm,
I think that's what we kind of still got into a really good conversation about at the start, and then it came into fruition that we were both musicians,
yeah.
and and it was, I feel like we just hit it off straight away from there, and it was interesting because, as you know, I'd had a bit of a um, odd experience arriving at Garda,
Yeah.
and I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to stay in this hostel, and then we got on so well and formed a little group that
Yeah.
I stayed an extra 3 days, I think.
Yeah, it was really just quite beautiful how it all kind of panned out. And I think one of the things that I loved was it's so funny seeing you with your journal because that for me was something that I used to do and something that I used to get so much enjoyment from doing. And what's really cool is we're going to talk about lockdown and the pandemic and how that's kind of affected us. But for me, I'd stopped that habit, whereas you were so sort of disciplined in kind of just keeping your thoughts and, getting it all out on paper. And I just think it's so interesting that we kind of converged at a point where I needed to be reminded of that. Yet you were kind of just doing that. And it's so interesting. We were at completely different stages of our life right now. And then it's like you go like that. I think it would be really interesting just to talk a little bit about, because you mentioned just as we met, you were kind of deciding whether you were going to stay at the hostel or not, but you had a little bit of a hair-raising experience. So maybe
Yeah.
you might want to relay that story for everyone.
Yeah, it was I can't remember what the stop before was, but I was coming. It was obviously a trip around northern Italy that I was doing, and I think you were a similar sort of thing as well. And I'd been followed. One of the stops, I'd stopped at Verona to get the bus to Garda, and I'd unknowingly, until I arrived in Garda, I'd been followed. So a man had got on the bus. He'd seen me asking for directions. Obviously, I'm only 5 foot tall, and I'm there with a backpack probably bigger than me, and
just along with
just
you.
bumbling around trying to speak very, very broken Italian, and obviously attracted some attention. There wasn't very many like young women around at this bus stop, and so he got on the bus. It was like an hour and a half journey from Verona to Garda, and then got off the bus with me and continued to like follow me down the street and was trying to like tell me that he wanted me to spend the day with him. And then it like I had my translate, so I could translate what he was saying, and it was escalating.
Like, F off.
Yeah, and it was escalating, and it wasn't. It went from like I want to spend the day to you to like I'm saying I need to get to my hotel, and he's saying I'll come into your hotel with you, and all this. So I think the whole thing ended, and I ended up just like he stood in my way, and then I think I just barged past him and literally ran and checked in, and I don't think I really realized how shaken up I was by it until I got into my room and just like burst into tears. And then unknowingly there was somebody in the room, which was actually our room in the end, but it was a girl called Amy from South Africa, and she'd overheard. I'd called like a friend of mine and told them what happened, and then she ended up overhearing it, and she'd been having a nap like in her bunk, and I hadn't even noticed she was there, and she sort of checked in, and it checked in with me and was like, oh, that's so horrible. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to stay in the hostel tonight, because obviously I was going to go and wander around the old town by myself. And she said, no, you're not staying in. I'll go out with you. Let's go out together.
Yeah.
And we had the most gorgeous evening. We went out to dinner. We wandered around the old town, saw the sunset. And then I believe it was the next morning that I met you.
Yeah. What I love about that is that solidarity. And I think, one thing that I've seen and what I love from doing so much backpacking is that kind of solidarity between, I think it is especially with women as well, is that when again, I will never really truly know this, but being a solo traveler anyway, regardless of your gender, like it's still really intimidating. But if you throw into like the equation something that's like quite traumatic and stressful, having sort of like somebody there, that kind of just either takes you under their wing or shares their food or whatever it is, it just kind of it gives you that comfort from home as well. And I think what's really beautiful about that, because by the sounds of things, you had a bit of a fight or flight moment, and you were questioning, why did I put myself in this position? And I think one of the things that we'll talk about a lot in this podcast is about what it's like actually being a female artist and creator and a traveler, and what it's like facing misogyny as well, because quite clearly the person who made you feel really uncomfortable did not respect your boundaries, did not take no for an answer. But I actually want to commend you for how you dealt with it, because I think in that moment, although you were afraid and it was quite overwhelming, you used your instincts and you trusted your gut.
Mm.
And also, there's a part, one of the things I like most about you is that you are very honest and vulnerable with people. So there's no surprise for me that you made that connection with Amy straight away, because
Mm.
you arrived and you just gave yourself to that situation. So that's probably why you forged that connection.
Mm. Yeah, totally, totally. And I think it's like, I think I always want to think the best of people.
Mm,
Um, and that can be a good and a bad thing because it makes me quite trusting. But then I think for me, it really showed that, like that experience. Obviously, I just thought this guy's a pleasant man. Why
yeah.
is he trying to speak to me? And then obviously it came into fruition that it was a little bit more sinister than that. Um, but then for everyone, especially like bad experiences with men, for example, like there's always going to be another human being who really wants to take you under their wing and make sure you're okay and share experiences that are enjoyable together. So yeah, I think,
It's like that kind of mix of like trusting your instincts, but also, one of the things I think when we go on to talk a little bit about your music later, we'll talk about like how you've really put some boundaries in with people. And I think, this is quite an interesting thing to have happened when it did, because that could have ruined your travel experience and closed you off from making so many connections. So I do think that, it happened for a reason. And I think that, like I say, you dealt with it really, really well.
thank
Um,
you.
so this next day, you're outside in one of the common areas, and obviously we bump into each other, and it's really interesting because the hostel that we stayed at had this piano in the main area.
Yeah.
Um, a very strange hostel because it didn't really have like a lot of communal spaces where you would naturally congregate. It was quite separated,
Yeah.
and of course, all friendships bond over cheap wine and cigarettes. And we, obviously, with a group like ours, it's that kind of like you want to be part of the A team. So, a lot of the evenings were spent up on the terrace, like, putting the world to rights, which was really, really sweet.
Yeah.
It might be fun to like talk about like getting into trouble.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember what his actual name was. But obviously,
Ask it, but he
yeah,
took us
there was this
back.
security guard in the hostel, and it was 11 p.m. exactly every night. It was like right lockdown, and
Yeah.
so it didn't matter who was sat at that piano singing the
Past
most, singing their heart out at the piano. He'd be like, right, anyone out having a cigarette? He'd be there, like ushering you in, like it's
Yeah.
fucking evacuation,
And
like
what
it's
did
a
we call
military drill. Um, and he had a little security shirt and a hat and stuff,
Oh, the
didn't he?
badge. Do you remember the
Oh, a
badge?
badge. That was
Yeah. Were we gonna like go out and see if we could find like a plastic, like a kind of a kid's like toy one, and be like, because you came up with the name Robocock, which I just thought was hilarious, just because he was like there, like this kind of badass, like patrolling, just making sure that people weren't having fun.
we were scheming about how one of us might seduce him to let us stay up half an hour later.
I know, to see if we could tempt him with some of like the cheapest, most disgusting. In fact, to be fair though, the actual wine in Italy, even the cheap stuff is really good. I'm just
Oh,
laughing because
yeah.
I can recall like having like a liter bottle of plastic wine, and
Oh my gosh, yeah.
and I think we'd like purloined like cups from the kitchen, and we were just kind of like just squeezing it in here every now and then. I think you had a water bottle and you were kind of decanting it into that.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds about right. And then we cook our little dinners as well, usually led by you.
Uh and
But
that's
yeah,
another thing like about
family dinner.
bringing people together, because the one
Mm,
thing from doing so much backpacking is that there's levelers, which are food, alcohol and music. And I think if you can provide like at least one of that golden triangle, you're going to be able to kind of just connect with people so much better. And I
yeah.
think for me, one of the things that I really cherish is that we'd sort of I was at a very interesting point too, because we just had the pandemic a few years previously. I would sort of put original music on pause, and actually one of the days after we'd sort of been up on the hostel roof putting the worlds to rights, you and I were sat by the lakeside, and
Mm,
I remember you played me Statues for the first time.
mm.
And just for a little bit of a shameless plug, Kate's working on what is her debut album, you would say, rather than an EP?
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be an EP, but
Yeah.
it's essentially a project to bookmark the songs that
Yeah.
I kind of started off with. So before I took myself out gigging as a musician, I was kind of furiously songwriting.
Yeah.
And Statue is probably one of the oldest songs on there, and has always been a very special song to me, and always it continues to be relevant to me. In it's become such bigger than what it was written about
Yeah.
originally. But yeah, it's kind of become a bit of an album, sort of going for a very live feel. So like if you
Yeah.
came to see me live, just me and the piano, you're essentially getting that, but we have got some some cello
Yeah.
tracked overdubbed as well on some of the tracks, which is
You know
lovely.
what I love too is that in not another shameless plug, but we obviously have written one of the songs, "Who's Gonna Save You," and one of
Mm,
the things that I love is that you've kept the sound of the foot pedal of the piano in there, because you
mm.
can be so kind of clinical with recording sometimes, but I know that you've purposefully done that to make it more of a connection, so that they feel like they're more part of the journey, rather than it just being this kind of very polished, clinical song that's been tuned within an inch of its life.
Totally, totally. And there's totally a place for that kind of production. And I think the reason I want to get this body of work out now is the stuff that I'm working on next.
Yeah.
Is so exciting and so about commercial production. And I'm still going to try and avoid tuning my voice so much, but it was really important to me to have these songs, I suppose, kind of documented as they are, as they were, how they were written. I wanted the listener to feel like they're in the room with me
Yeah.
playing that song the first time after I've just finished writing it,
Yeah,
so
it's that intimacy, isn't it? And
yeah,
I think
totally.
what you're saying really here is that this EP is a jumping on point. So, I know your heart's very much in, what comes next, but this is something I've learned myself from, putting together like an album of songs before the pandemic, is that we hear these songs like week in, week out, and we've heard them, we know all the little intricacies and the
Mm.
transitions, but people need a jumping on point, and I think that's what's really beautiful about this. And what I like as well is it's not just you know like fully produced tracks. You've got acoustic ones, you've got some live ones in there, and I think it's just giving people like a jumping on point to like the next part of your adventure.
Yeah, I mean, in lots of ways, it's kind of like um, going back to journaling. It's kind of like sharing my journal from that time, and um, it's just documenting a very transitional point in my life and my career.
Mm,
And it's a bit scrapbooky, and that's exactly how I wanted it to be.
yeah, it's
And
brave
it's
doing
really
that.
raw, which is nice, because everything I've got out at the moment, I think I'm so proud of the singles I've got, but this is definitely the most vulnerable piece of work that
Yeah.
I might ever put out. So yeah, it feels really cool.
It's so interesting to like, if I was to like describe your music and you as an artist to people, I would just say that you have got this ability to be so vulnerable and self-deprecating with people. And I don't think that, you're probably one of the most honest people I know, and I would say that you don't sugarcoat things. And I think it's really important that, there are artists out there doing that, because everything has become so about perfection. But I just think that's one of the things that will really like connect people to your music, is that it is an extension of you, and you don't sugarcoat things. You know, you say it as it is and deliver it so honestly.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I think I'm just a terrible, terrible liar.
I
And so
love
it's
that.
like, I don't know how to do it any other way. But I mean, when it comes to music, for me, that side of it is completely non-negotiable, and I have to believe everything that I'm singing as if I'm saying it. And
Yeah.
I totally sing in my voice, and I don't know how to do it any other way.
And
You
I
know,
think,
which sometimes can feel limiting, but also that's the thing about me as an artist that I'm really proud of.
yeah,
Um,
I
so
think,
yeah, it's I think being honest is really important, and I know some of my favorite songs in the world are about people doing questionable things, and being messy and human as we all are. So yeah.
I would say that you're kind of like the archetype of a singer-songwriter. You know, you really do, channel your life experiences and, weave them to music. And I think we obviously started off our journey, like halfway through the book, which is, potentially 3-4 years ago. But I think it would be really interesting to look at where it all began and
Mm.
what kind of got you into music in the first place.
Yeah, well, I suppose it was the first thing would be um, growing up in my house. There was like just total unconditional love for any
Mm,
music, any genre. But I did grow up with a lot of, I suppose, older music, like
yeah,
just because of my parents' tastes. So there was lots of blues, uh, there was and a lot of like folk as well. Um, but then also like pop as well. I do remember, so it was all sorts. My dad was a big Bob Dylan fan, so I learnt to admire the craft of lyrics. Carole King as well. Tapestry was an album that was
oh,
played.
that's an amazing album.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be probably my favorite album of all
It's
time.
iconic, isn't it?
And I think, yeah, Carole King, and then obviously Amy Winehouse. I grew up in the noughties, so she was very prevalent, and then the old soul as well was like, yeah. So I think I grew up, and then I went to see a lot of live music as well. My parents used to
Yeah.
love taking us out to pubs to go and see local bands.
Mm.
So yeah, I just absolutely grew up immersed in music, although
Did
none of my family
you know
were
that,
musicians.
did you know that you wanted to create music and be an artist, or did you not know at that point?
I think, to be fair, I think I always dreamt big,
Yeah.
as a child, and that's something that I had to come back to. Um, but yeah, when I was younger, as soon as I discovered, like, I don't know who the pop stars would be, the biggest ones. I suppose, like, I think Miley Cyrus. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't actually have Disney Channel as a kid, but like,
Yeah.
I remember seeing The Climb and like singing to my hairbrush in front of the
Yeah.
mirror.
Oh,
Like,
we've all got like the token like prop to like, yeah.
yeah, 100%. And yeah, so I think, I mean, as soon as I did get piano lessons. I kept singing, and I was obviously horrific at singing at that point, like 7 years old. And then I think my mum and dad thought, right, let's just get her some sort of music lessons.
Shut her up.
Shut her up, yeah.
Yeah.
So my mum had a mutual friend who was a piano teacher, so I
Yeah.
started piano lessons when I was 7. I was an awful student. I never practiced. Um, but I didn't practice the classical stuff. That was my
Yeah.
problem, because I wanted to play pop music.
Yeah. You wanted more.
So and YouTube was sort of like just emerging as a thing.
Yeah.
And so I'd go and I'd try and hear it and I'd copy it.
Yeah.
And so I started learning chords. And as
Yeah.
soon as I could play chords, I was like, I don't want to play Beethoven. I
Yeah.
was like, so yeah, I think as soon as I could play chords, I was writing songs.
Yeah. Do you remember like any particular like childhood memories of you, with your instrument and composing? Did you ever do like I'm just thinking about you, little Kate, performing to her family or anything like that. Do you have any memories, or like even performing at school? Can you remember any of that?
Yeah, well, I think through school, yeah, I did do a lot of performing in school. We did like, I used to get like karaoke tracks, so I didn't always sing and play when I just was learning the piano. But I remember like asking my dad to buy me uh, a karaoke backing track
Yeah.
for James Blunt, "Carry You Home." You know that song,
Oh, yeah.
"Strong as You Are." Yeah,
Oh, what I mean, and I'll carry you.
yeah, that's it. And I sang it for the talent show, the end of year talent show,
Did you
and
win?
I made a whole like, I had my outfit, I had a like choreography, like I had to walk
Yeah.
around,
Oh,
and
I
like I
love that.
started with my back to the audience in the classroom,
Classic era.
and then it was like turn around, like strong as you are.
Oh, I love it. Did you? And you choreographed your own routine to it as well.
Yeah, and then like the next year, I did an even heavier choreographed version of "Got to Go My Own Way" from High School Musical. So
Oh my god, it's so funny. So it's like basically the hallmarks of the Kate Hall show just been in there. Like, but the thing
yeah,
is, it's like I just cringe because like I'm not at you firstly, just to say, but like I just thinking back to like performing at school and like I don't know, like I've
you
just got
must have a memory like that.
triggering memory of like me making up a dance routine to like a song and then just like everybody being like, and then the thing is, it's like, I'm just literally dying now because I'm just imagining it. And like, even now, I'm like
What's the
triggered.
song, Ian? What's the song?
Oh no, I can't. I just don't want to go there. Like,
Is it
it's
Britney?
no, it's like, it's even worse. I think it was like the Pet Shop Boys or something. Like,
Oh, great.
I know. And the thing is that I think sometimes you need to get that out of your system. Do you know what I mean? It's a little
But
bit
it's
like,
interesting though, isn't it? Because all of that, because it's funny how you come back to that though, because now
yeah,
I'm thinking about building a show
yeah,
and I'm like,
gonna put that in
yeah,
there.
where am I going to walk on stage and like what, like I've got to wear the right things and how has the band got to look? Like
Yeah,
I'm kind of learning to play again in the same way that I did as like an 8-year-old girl, like
yeah.
thinking about the year 3 talent show.
But that's what I think is, that's even an extension of your songwriting because that's like your creativity. I'm just
Yeah.
laughing because like these types of memories, I'll be literally about to go to sleep and I'll be like lying there, nice peaceful zen, and then this thought will come from nowhere and it'll be like, "Meh. Do you remember? Do you remember
Oh
when you
God.
did that really embarrassing thing and everyone laughed at you?"
Oh, I mean, the most embarrassing one for me, I know I was telling you this story the other day, was I wrote a song. I was in year 7,
Yeah,
and it was like my first secondary school boyfriend,
yeah,
and we'd been together a month, so very serious,
yeah. Oh
And
my
he
god,
broke up with me, and
what a
I
smile.
wrote this song about him called "Remember," and I'd just got like Facebook as well,
Gosh,
and so it was that time where like everyone who just got Facebook was posting on Facebook.
poking
And
each other, no doubt.
so I posted this song about him that I'd written, kind of
You
basically
burnt
begging
him.
for him back. And it went like viral around the school. It got like like a couple thousand like likes or no
Yeah,
share or views or something, and then loads of likes. And then everyone was like,
I just love how you just owned that beast. Like you literally
well, I was
said,
embarrassed about it for so many years, but
it's
eventually it's going
iconic,
to come
though.
out, isn't it? So
Yeah, but I think it's just iconic, really, because like this is all about like you sort of learning who you are as a person, and it's like I think we emulate the artists that we see around us,
yeah.
and it's no surprise really that you are kind of like a bit of a cocktail of all of these people. Like you're as messy as Amy Winehouse, yet you've got that kind of you know childish joy of just capturing the world and as you see it. And I think a lot of artists, they lose that as they get older, but I think that's what's very unique about your perspective of the world. But it's funny, isn't it, that we can see things in perspective like as we get a bit older.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, I think what you do as you grow up is you just build more walls and more reasons not to play.
Yeah.
But I think travel as well is something that totally brought me back to that. And some of the people I met while I was traveling, including you, actually, is just like, it's like, but you can do these things and you can be silly as an adult if you want to. Not all the time. Like, you have your responsibilities,
Oh,
and you.
I don't know. Like, I think silly all the time is like a profession in itself.
Well, yeah,
I
but
think. Oh,
I think
go.
yeah, learning to just look at the world with a childlike wonder
Yeah.
is like, I mean, for someone like me who's a complete romantic about life, I need that. I
Yeah.
need that. It's like my soul needs it to be happy.
Do you find that when you're traveling that, and this is something I've found myself, is that I can arrive as who I am now without all of, the preconceptions or, the history that you've experienced or your current day-to-day life. I feel like you can just arrive and be who you want to be, and people just take you as you are. And actually, you're the most relevant and authentic version of yourself because you don't have other people's wants or um who they want you to be. You're just completely neutral to all of these new people, and I think it just accelerates you because when you're on a bus chatting to someone traveling for a few hours, or you're having a cheap glass of Italian wine on a roof, there's nothing else really to talk about other than your life and what you've experienced. And I think that kind of, to me, you are the archetype of what a wanderer is, because you do that so well. You travel and you create, and you just, I think it's a curiosity, isn't it? I think you're just a
Yeah,
very
yeah, totally.
curious person, and I think that's probably why you know you are just constantly moving on to like the next thing.
Well,
um
I think it's the same, and I think that's why we. Sorry, I'm knocking the microphone. That's why we connected really well, because I think we both have that mindset of like, even when you're not traveling, because since I've sort of started my career, it's been harder to get. I'm not quite at that point yet that I'm taking that time out
yeah,
again, but I always go around now with the travel mindset, and I think it's kind of like, you're totally right about how when you meet people traveling, you're free of judgment.
that's it, that's what I was saying.
Because I mean, my favorite thing, especially about solo travel, because it's just you, so you haven't got anybody stood next to you like, no, that's not quite actually who you are.
Yeah,
Um,
they're not
so
judging you constantly.
yeah, and like, I felt like in each person I met, I was trying on like different versions of Kate.
Different hats.
Yeah, different hats, totally. And I think actually, Ian, you might be the first person that I put the musician hat on. And
Oh,
you said you introduced yourself as a musician, and I said, "Oh, I'm a musician." And I remember like hearing it come out of my mouth, and I said, "No, you're not." But like, I was,
yeah,
and
but
I
how
think,
funny is that? You said it with such conviction
yeah,
that I was like, oh, okay, she is a musician. And then, with you and me sitting there singing Adele at the piano and doing our heart,
oh
I've
yeah,
just remembered that as well. But I think that's the thing, is like, I feel like, from what you're saying to me, is that you, with music, it's given you this play, it's allowed you to sort of play and learn and evolve. And I think it is just like your child has come with you on this journey. And
mm,
that's why I just think that it's like, one of the things is that there's this kind of cliche of singer-songwriters that we're going to just write a song about you and trauma all of our feelings into it, and
yeah,
that we're somehow taking away or demanding a space, or showing off. And it's like, actually, it's okay to, like, this is how you process the world around you. And it's like, actually, that is who you are as a person. And it's like, all you're doing is just putting together your story as a person and helping people to connect with it. And by doing so, all of your experiences that you've been through will help other people along the way.
mm, totally. And I think, I mean, I don't know I'm sure you feel the same, but I think when you are a creative, it's not even that it's I want to do this. It's like a need. It's like
To do it.
if I'm in a creative rut and I haven't written anything for a while, I start panicking. I start it's like my nervous system's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because and that's when I start seeking out experiences like travel,
It's the
or
dopamine, isn't it, really?
yeah, or even new projects. Anything to get me out of my comfort zone and get me back into my. I feel like it's like the state that my like being needs to be in, which
Yeah.
is I have to be observing and creating. And when I'm not in that mode, I'm not a very happy person.
Yeah, it's a destructive part. I think it would be really good to, because we jumped on, we went to the, what I would say is like the beginning of the start of your music career. We went right back to the beginning, which is obviously how you first got that exposure to music. But I think what would be really good to talk about is actually the pandemic, because really, it's so interesting. When we had a little chat about this yesterday, because we were making sure we were prepared for today, but one of
Yeah.
the things that I totally didn't even consider was that you were at university at the time when the pandemic hit. Now, for me, I had already sort of had a bit of a career and had been traveling and all of that. But for you, that was your first kind of, that's a point in like a young adult's life where they're at their most adventurous and most curious. Yet you were confined, by lockdown. And, one of the things that really struck me is that one of the reasons that you said that you went traveling in the first place was because you had been constricted by it. So it was like a necessity for you. But I just want to know a little bit about what it was like when lockdown hit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as you say, I was at university at the time. I was in my first year. I'd taken a year out, or sort of, I'd had in my A levels, I'd had a bit of a wobbly, so I'd
Yeah.
had to do another year to sit my exams because I was desperate to get to a Russell Group university. That was my absolute goal. Exeter University, studying English. That was like, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to be a journalist, and I'm
Make
going to,
your parents proud.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, make my parents proud. And oh yeah, and like I make my English teacher proud and myself proud. And I was a very academic, like a very academic young person.
Yeah.
That was what I was good at. And yeah, I was just at university, and I think my first few months, to be honest, since I'd turned 18 and I was 19 when I got to uni, it was starting to emerge that maybe like I did have a bit of a problem with drinking. And then lockdown hit. So in March, and I'd just finished pretty much the first year of university, and we all get sent home, and I'm just starting to forge connections with people. And I was actually forming a band at the time. So I was starting to chuck myself into music.
Dip your toes in.
Yeah. And then we all got sent home, and there was no live music. And
I mean, it's making me like, even now you saying it and people say, oh, he's woke or whatever, but I'm literally feeling this like drop in my stomach when you're talking about it, because the day before lockdown happened, I was doing a St. Patrick's Day gig with my bandmate, and we were all, people were still out there having a drink and everybody was merry, yet there was that foreboding that something was about to happen. But I just remember thinking, this can't last forever. Like
yeah,
it just can't. But I mean, in some ways, although lockdown was such a hideous, hideous time for me because I was on my own throughout most of it, I had at least done some travel. I had, experienced life as a musician. I'd done all of these things. But for you, you were what, 20?
Yeah, I was 19.
Yeah,
Oh
19.
no. Yes, I think I was God, I don't know.
I'll just say for the purposes of the story, it's your artistic right to decide which age you
I
were.
was younger. Let's say I was younger.
When I
Yeah.
was younger.
When I was younger. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd done one interrailing trip with my friend,
Yeah.
which was a couple of weeks in Europe, and that was, I'd really really loved that.
Yeah.
We had just an absolute smashing time, and that was just before I went to uni, and then and then lockdown hitting. I think the big dream that myself and this same friend had always talked about growing up was that we wanted to go to the other side of the world. We wanted to go and see Southeast Asia.
So you'd had
And
like the starter of like the meal, hadn't you? You'd had that first, and what's
yeah,
really,
like, can we do this?
yeah. I think actually, just sorry to interrupt you, but talking about Interrail really, really quickly.
Yeah.
I did an Interrail trip like you, and what I loved about it is it's kind of like, like the stabilizer version of a bike of getting
Yeah.
to travel, because you've got like a rough route based on the trains, and also finding a hostel likely to be near the station. It gives you that kind of framework, and I think what's really nice is that you had like a very gentle sort of shoehorn into that, and I can imagine that would have been really hard, like to have been given a taste of something and then suddenly it be snatched away.
Mm. Yeah. I think, COVID was the first sort of few weeks were like kind of enjoyable. I mean, it
It's
was that
exciting because you don't.
blazing sun, and went back to my mum and dad's, and we were, outside in the sunshine, having drinks, doing the quizzes, all of that. And then
It went on and it
it
went
just kept
on and it
going
went
on and
on.
on, didn't it?
Oh
Yeah.
my god! It was like the world's worst encore. It just kept the gift that kept on giving. It would just go on and on and
Yeah. Yeah, it's literally like when you're at a gig and they keep saying one more, one more.
yeah, it's like
You're
actually
like,
want
I
to
just want to
go.
go home.
Yeah. My favorite one is that I'm really sorry, but the equipment stopped working because I've pulled the plug out.
And I am the equipment.
Yeah, what I do sometimes is just say no and don't give an answer. I'm just literally no. It's the same if someone's like, "Oh, can I get up and sing?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
I
even
had to
want
learn
to
that one pretty
try.
early on.
Just not.
I once let one man, he was like, "Can I sing a song for my wife?" And I thought, I was quite early into the gigging, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cute. Of course you can." He gets up, does like 4 songs, and
Oh,
then people
no.
start making requests to him, and I was like, "Okay."
Oh my god, that's like the most critical. But the thing is, it's like when I do weddings, like because obviously I sing as a wedding singer, people will come up and be like, "Oh, our mate Dave, he's a great singer." And it's like, I don't care. Why are you telling me? And it's like, oh, so Dave is being paid a premium to get up and perform in front of everyone, is he? Oh no, he's a guest at the wedding. It's like, oh, it just does my head in. Sorry,
Yeah.
we've wandered off
We've
course.
wandered off.
Yes, no, but I hear what you're saying. Like there was that kind of excitement about the pandemic because there was time to put on Netflix and watch some stuff and sleep in if you wanted to, and but I think there was that kind of lack of expectation of how long it was going to go on for, and I just even though I found it really, really hard, like I actually think it probably would have been worse for you because you hadn't really had sort of like years of gigging and all of real freedom
Mm.
beforehand, but not knowing there wasn't an endpoint to it, that would have been
Yeah.
really hard. And you said that you can remember just sort of drinking on your own, and I know it's not a nice thing to go back to, but can
Mm.
you remember a bit about what was like going through your head and what you were feeling?
Yeah. Well, I think obviously it got to a point and lockdown was just boring. Um, I was missing making new friends. That's what I was supposed to be doing at this point in my life, you know. And yeah, I just got into a bit of a vicious cycle with it.
Mm.
And yeah, I think I ended up finding like these Discord servers where there were people from around the world doing the same thing. And it became like a routine, and I would be
Yeah.
there like until until it was light the next day. I'd start in the evening and I'd be there all night. And I don't even know what we were talking about half the time. And then quite often as well, I wouldn't even join the things. I'd just be drinking in my room and listening to music, maybe trying to write music. But
It's
there's
not
definitely a fine line between like the second and the 10th glass of wine,
well.
where anything you're trying to make just doesn't make sense
The
anymore.
thing is, it's like it is, you know it yourself that it's like actually medicating boredom. And I
Yeah.
think, I can really relate because when lockdown hit, I went on hiatus with my music because for me, the excitement and the wonder and the curiosity was the thing that fueled the damn thing. So
Mm.
people were like, "Oh, it's going to be so great. You're going to have all that time to sit at home and write." And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's like a live thing that happens. That it's like like a machine. You can't fuel the machine without the power. And
Mm.
the thing that actually created the music was removed, and that was what the art was about. And that's what I think is frustrating because people just think that you'd have like this kind of free time to just do all this stuff, but you're actually sat there ruminating on everything that you've experienced so far. And for you, you were sort of daydreaming about travel and doing it as a career. And I suppose all you've got is that echo chamber of your own thoughts going around in your head, I would guess.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because when I look back then when I was sort of 19, 20,
Yeah.
21, even 22, like that whole few years,
Mm.
I was just completely lost. Like I had no idea what I was heading towards. And I think that the more confused that I was, the more that I did turn to things like drinking.
Awful echo chamber of like loss of potential, again, frustration, all these things. And, I have to be really honest with you. When you told me about your experience before your traveling of being during that pandemic, I just felt so sad. It made me really emotional because I could really relate to what you were experiencing. But I know a lot of it is boredom. And it's like without that stimulation of like other people and,
Mm.
light, shade, like emotions, you're effectively on hold. And it was the cruelest thing to like happen to a lot of people. And I think especially somebody who is of your kind of mind, because you're somebody who really needs that dopamine, that
Mm.
adrenaline, all of those things. I can understand why you would. And I hope that you don't give yourself a hard time about the drinking because essentially there wasn't anything else you could have done. And the minute that you take away something that is helping prolong what you're experiencing, it could have been a lot worse. And I think, there were times, if I'm really honest with you, that I just knew in my mind when that third lockdown hit, I'd mentally said to myself, I cannot do, if this isn't the end of it in 3 months, I just can't do this anymore. And
Mm.
fortunately it just kind of tailed off and went on. But we're not superhuman.
Yeah.
And it's testament to you that you kept going and you didn't lose that. But all I wanted to say, and although I've labored the point, I know that you do talk about alcohol very candidly, but I don't
Mm.
want you to feel like it becomes alcoholism, because essentially it was a short term thing that helped you kind of get over the line. It's not the world's best coping strategy, but
No.
it was something that just kept the edge off, you know.
I mean, I think that it's interesting because since I've been doing music as a job, my big fear around that is like it's kind of the one job where you are often encouraged to drink. Um,
In venues that are supplying drink as well.
yeah, exactly. Which is often where I am. You know, pubs, bars, even restaurants. You know, and but if anything, my drinking's really under control, and I think it's because I have I'm at peace with the relationship that I had with alcohol, and I because I didn't start my career as a musician until I was 23, which is still young, but lots of people start when they're 18, you know. And I do sometimes see the COVID years as like the lost years, and for a while it was like I thought wasted years. I thought, well,
Yeah.
I should have been getting going then. You know, I had loads of songs under my belt that I'd been writing.
That's the title, Kate. Wasted years, but like as in drunk wasted. That'd
Yeah.
be.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Well,
I
let's
didn't even
cut this
realize
out
that.
just in case.
Nice spot. Yeah.
Don't you
But
go
yeah, it was
support
kind of
that?
like, yeah, the wasted years.
Oh my, brilliant.
But they weren't wasted though, because I don't think I would have had I wouldn't be who I am without having overcome that, because I very much could have spiraled down and, you know, let it consume me and just get into a rut and get to the end of my degree and just stay in line. But I think the combination of like being bored, because the thing I was using to treat the boredom, I got bored with that. I was bored of being drunk, and I was bored with being hungover, and that's when I finished my degree, and I was like, right, well, this travel's got to happen. The world's opened up again now, and you know, my friend who I went with to Asia was in the exact same boat. She's like, we'd both finished our degrees at the same time, and we were like, we need to do this. You know, we owe it to ourselves. We nearly lost this amazing thing that feels really important to us and our experience of life, to go and explore this world. And so, yeah, then that's when I suppose my like travel, my wandering really began. Was coming out of the pandemic and out of a very, very dark place in my head, and thinking there's got to be more than this. There's got to be more to life than this, and there is, thankfully.
One of the things that we talk about quite a lot is about you mentioned that you went through the say yes era, and now you feel like you're going into the say no era. And
Yeah.
I think a lovely little jumping on point now is when we can talk about when obviously we were in Italy, and you know, having our wonderful whirlwind friend Mans. I just happened to drop into conversation. Oh, by the way, Kate, I run these writing camps. You should definitely come along. And I remember like there was this kind of like the yeah moment where I think you were like, yeah. And then I think I don't know if you were trying to convince yourself or convince me.
A bit of
But
both,
I'm
I think.
so impressed when you were like, look, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna come down. What was it like for you kind of coming into space, being surrounded by, you know, 25 other people that are of the same mindset, doing very similar things? What was it like coming into that environment?
Actually terrifying, I think. At that stage, I was shell shocked. I had never been in a community like that ever. You know, even in like music bars that I like drinking at, and we had, you know, friendship groups that were all musicians, but I'd never been in a space like that where I could actually sit with a bunch of people stone cold sober and just everybody's dedicated to music and creating and being vulnerable. And yeah, it was like it's hard to describe, but I was shell shocked But it's funny how, because I was like not going to go.
Yeah.
And I was saying it to you
A
while
waffle.
we were there. You were like, oh, you've got to come. And I was like, yeah. And I'm going to myself, I'm not going to that because I don't carry on. Like, I meet people in hostels
Yeah.
and we forge amazing connections there. And then we move on and never speak again. And I like that, that was, and I was like, there's no need for me to do that. And then I think we got a few days in and I was like, I might do it.
Yeah.
I might do it. And then, a month later, there I was like getting in someone's car, getting a lift with somebody else who was also attending for the first time, I think.
Oh.
Meeting them at the train station and going, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. I love that though. But like I do, funny enough, I do actually understand because like I went on my first songwriting retreat about 12 years ago, something like that, possibly even more. And I remember being in the coach around all of these people that were talking about publishing and, having these songs cut by other artists. And what was going on in my head was like, imposter, imposter,
Yeah.
imposter. Like, you're not meant to be here. You're not
Yeah.
meant to be here. And I remember like doing the very first playback, and one of the songs that I'm putting on this latest collection that is coming out, which is called
Ooh.
Before the World Shut Down. The song's called Monochrome, and it was like the first time I'd ever performed in front of a group of my peers. And I remember like just my voice was not doing what it needed to do. And I had to remember getting halfway through the playback and going outside during the break and just giving myself a talking to. And I just literally said it aloud to myself. I was like, you deserve to be here. You deserve to give it a crack. You just give it whatever you can do. And it is enough just being here and showing up. And I remember throughout the week, as soon as the pressure came off, I just really kind of eased into it. But I just genuinely didn't feel like I was good enough to be there. And I think it really did teach me that it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, it only matters what I think. But also, I'm just glad that, I didn't give myself too much of a hard time. But I think I do understand what it would have been like. It would have been really daunting. On the flip side of it, I guess, you say about like, just feeling that you don't need to have a drink in order to be able to just arrive. What was, for me, I just love the fact that you can just walk into a room and there's someone waiting to give you a hug, and then suddenly someone will have cooked a dinner, and then there's a glass of prosecco being poured, and then suddenly I'm eating a snack, and all these things that I don't really do at home. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I'll just have like some crisps, and then okay, and then I'll go and swim in the rapids, and then we'll write a song with someone that I've never met before, and then play it back to a group. But I think it's something about, and this is where you and I are really similar. It's about being able to play as adults.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's, I mean, certainly in our lodge,
Yeah.
all we do is just regress into silly little
Or
teenagers,
really
don't we?
sit someone like you'll just walk in and I'll be like, "Oi, my name's Kate, and I would like you to come to a gig."
I
And
mean, the impressions are the highlight of my week.
or just be like, "Can you just go?" Like, or just literally just shut the door in your face, and it's just something. Just you're allowed. There are no real boundaries, like of just kind of and people are always saying, "Oh, is it a cult? Is it a cult?" But I think it's just genuine.
Yes, it is a cult.
I have to say that when I was a young adult, I used to go to when you go to a pub and you see a table of a group of people and they've got like this kind of clique, and I was used to have that kind of real sense of sadness that I didn't really have like a friendship group, and I've always been a little bit of a flitterer in terms of like I've had a few very limited friends that I'm very close to, but they're not a group. Now, what kind of happened with this community of songwriters, artists, and producers is that just naturally, by people just being their absolute iconic, quirky selves, I don't know, it just kind of naturally happened of like with people coming together. So it's kind of, I knew when I asked you to come along that you wouldn't have had any problems because, you know, you and I had forged a connection like that. So why would
Mm.
it be any different knowing that, you know, you being your honest and self-deprecating self, I knew that
Mm.
you would just literally slot right in.
Yeah, completely. And I actually really resonate with what you're saying about um, never quite having a group of people that you can be totally yourself with. You know, I always had friendship groups like growing up and stuff. But I did flit around, and I think I always felt like I was acting a bit
Mm,
because just in case the real part of me that was the most important thing to me, really, which is like the creative side, that perhaps other people wouldn't understand and would find it a bit cringe. And maybe if I really said what I was thinking about the things I was seeing, people might be like, "Oh, she's on another planet," you know.
yeah.
Um, and I think that's actually why it's such a special place, because I think
Mhm.
creatives are quite lonely people,
Yeah.
because like we just have a certain way of going around the world and observing things and seeing things that some people don't understand or don't gel with. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I was shell shocked in the best of ways, because it was like, there's other people who think like I do, and
Yeah.
I can just,
World. Yeah.
like, sometimes I'm, you know, speaking to people, I've never felt more understood. Um,
Held and
and
understood.
yeah, held. Oh my God. I mean, I feel like the retreats are, it's so much of it is holding space
Mm,
for people who often don't allow it, because we're all like masking in some
yeah.
way.
And you don't have to mask around anyone. And what
Yeah, and in some ways, I mean, I always, when I come back and people are asking me like, "How was your week?" Must have been relaxing, and I'm like,
no, I've just literally like just aired my like dirty laundry in front of like a group of people I
it's
don't
like
know.
kind of walking around with like all your guts hanging out
Yes.
for a week, isn't it? It's like, and then you're just holding them in your hands, like
Yeah.
showing them to people, like, this is my
Yeah.
insides.
And I'm like,
What do you?
oh, nice, nice. I've got similar insights, except I
Yeah, and then we're all sort of looking at each other's, and
bum.
then you basically,
Yeah.
you get in the car and you stuff it all back in and sew it up, and then you kind of just have to go back and act like they've not been totally rearranged inside you.
Well, hey, actually, you did something which is actually quite iconic, which is that you left the last camp with a little guest in your car, didn't you? That you weren't
Oh
expecting.
yeah, yeah. I took home a Centre Parks toad. Um,
Was
I
it?
don't know how he leapt into my boot, but I got to the service station halfway, opened my boot,
Yeah.
turned around to Andy, who was with me,
Mm.
um, and I went, "Andy, why is there a frog in my car?" And it was literally like this. It was just like staring right at
Just
us.
waiting for you to give it like one of your songs about yourself. It was like, come on, tell me about yourself, Kate. I want to
It
hear it.
was really interesting though, because I was speaking to, like, I obviously sent it to everyone, and Jenix afterwards, and she was talking about how uh, frogs are like symbolize like transformation and like self
New music.
transformation and realization. And I was like, oh shit, maybe God is real.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is now that you've probably introduced like an indigenous like toad into like the
Plymouth.
countryside. But to be fair, like you could no, I better not say that. I just don't want to offend any listeners from Plymouth if you are there.
Oh, Plymouth.
Um, so now that we've kind of covered like how you first got into music, what made you travel.
Mm,
We've had a little bit of a discussion about what life is like as a singer-songwriter. But I think what would be really nice is to talk about, you know, what you really want from the future, you know, what your goals are, what kind of motivates you. And, you know, we talked a little bit before about, you know, what a show looks like. And you know, you were saying about applying your kind of childhood show to make it like obviously 4-dimensional. But tell me a little bit about what you want to do now going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the challenges of things like streaming, I think financially and just generally for me, the most enjoyable way to get the music out there is take it live. And I've always loved live music. As I said, my parents used to take me to live music a lot as a kid, and it's always really interesting to see how people craft a live show because there's so much that goes into that. And so I'm obviously playing with a band now, and we're having lots of discussions about how we might set the stage up and what we might be wearing, and at what points of the show will I be playing the keys and what other times will I be walking around being a pop star. And I really like the idea of, and even like scripting and ordering the songs in such a way that it's almost like theatre. And someone who's amazing at this, who I saw recently, is Ray.
Yeah.
And she really there's like very much a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there's the moments where it comes down and the moments where it comes up and it's cathartic, and moments where you're in tears because, bringing a song to you that's really vulnerable, followed by just something that's really boppy. It's like, there's nothing more disappointing than when you go to a show and the band might be the best band on the planet, but if they're just ticking off the set list, so, you can even be there like, oh, how long have we got left? I actually need a wee now.
Like a show, right?
Yeah.
But
I think if people are like paying to come and see us, I want it to be like an amazing night.
Yeah.
And the songs deserve that as well.
Because you were talking before about it being like an immersive experience, and I think what you're saying is it's like so many people are on their phones at gigs recording, and what you want to do is captivate them, take them on a story, and make sure that they're literally moving from one thing to the other, and it's like you kind of owe, like you say, you owe that to your songs.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about other things as well. So, for you, would you like to do more travel? Do you want to eventually buy a place? What other things that you'd really like to do with your life?
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal for me would be get myself set up to a point that I can travel like the first sort of half of the year. At the moment, I'm trying to make the best out of building a bit more of a business in like events and weddings, kind of like you. And I know that you're giving me a lot of guidance on that as well, which is
unsolicited.
There's so many ways that you have to make it work.
Yeah.
As an independent artist, because there's not a lot of support, and I still have to work a cafe job to fund like all the aspects of it, even just
rehearsal,
making the time. Yeah. So, but obviously as musicians, a lot of our work sits in the second half of the year.
Yeah.
So it would be great to get to a point where I could take sort of January and February at least almost entirely off and be, wherever I've been wanting to visit. And
I think that you will make it happen. And I think one of the things I remember actually on one of the camps we sat down and had a talk about, because there's something in you that I feel like maybe went on hold a few years ago, which is this kind of fire in your belly to kind of, I haven't seen a drive like that in someone in such a long time. And I know that with your work ethic and, you're so, you've got such a strong vision about what you want and actually what you don't want. And one of the things I love is that you said to me recently that you're in your say no era, where you had that wonderful time with all these opportunities like kind of coming in, and you're like, yep, 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 yep. But now and again, we talked a little bit about, dealing with people in the music industry, and obviously, dealing with men in the music industry, being a woman. It's really comforting for me to see like how assertive you are when, things are not serving your vision and what you want.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult, and it's hard to talk about. I mean, I love men, right? I work with men more than I do women, actually.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's always a biological instinct that you should keep the men happy. I think it's actually quite a physical thing to not annoy people, and saying no always offers the opportunity of conflict, which is, and that, I mean, that is something I have been in my life very often a people pleaser,
Mm,
especially when it comes to saying no to men, because I think there's just that fear of like, well, what are they going to do if I say no? And that doesn't mean that I necessarily think that
yeah.
anybody's going to turn around and be violent or aggressive to me, but it's like a biological recognition. I'm a small woman as well,
Mm.
and
I
it's
forget
like,
sometimes, though. I forget because you've got such a big voice and a big presence. But even when you were relaying the story earlier about you with your backpack and being followed,
mm,
like when you were traveling, I do forget that. And I suppose the perception from being on the outside is that your height isn't something that I would even think about. But I think it's really interesting that a lot of what you're saying is actually, and they'll call us woke for saying it, but essentially society, media, um, teaching, everything is geared towards women being quite subservient and to not say no. And if she
mm.
says no, she's a bitch. And it's like, or she's difficult. And it's like,
Oh,
you know,
totally, yeah.
you shouldn't ever really feel that way. And saying no to people in business is difficult and it's uncomfortable and it doesn't necessarily feel good, but it's like you you'll let. And I think the thing is you've, even from that experience of you backpacking,
Mm.
you've taken all of these experiences and now you are more comfortable removing situations that don't serve you and being calm about it. And I commend you for that, because I can imagine that would be really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I always have to remind myself of is like never be too comfortable. And I think David Bowie has a really good interview out there about this, about how as an artist you should never be comfortable.
Mm,
And when you're just starting to feel, he says something like, I'm sort of paraphrasing, but when you're just feeling out of your depth, that's when the magic happens.
yeah,
And I love that. And I sort of think about that interview very often. And when I've got to make difficult decisions,
yeah,
and I have had a few of those lately, and you can't keep everybody happy, but when it comes to your dreams really and
yeah.
your visions
It's not
of where you need to
negotiable.
be, you have to protect the energy. and and I think sometimes when things feel the most scary is when it's probably the most important decision that you're going to make. And whether that's like, should I release this song, or should I be working with this person, or you know even like, I mean, I just quit smoking. That was a scary decision to make. Certainly the right one, because my voice feels a lot better for it.
Yeah,
Anything that feels uncomfortable um, is usually in my case, like decision wise. I
yeah.
mean, not like men touching you or anything.
I know, no. I hear what you're saying, and I think I one of the things that makes me laugh is that people don't realize how much administration goes into putting a release together. And there are things that we will sit on and procrastinate over for ages. And one thing I loved this morning is I got a message from you being like, oh, could you just send me over your PRS number to register the sound recording? Now, for me, that would be the height of something that's very, very difficult and a bit of a struggle, something that I would procrastinate over. But that's what I love about you, is you're just kind of a bit like, oh yeah, I'm just going to send it to the distributor. I just need it today. And it's kind of a bit like, I'm just laughing because you said it so blasé in your message. And I'm thinking, oh, trigger, trigger, trigger. But
Yeah. It's so funny though, because I don't know about you. I think I talked to you about this recently. I was going through
yeah,
a bit of a lull in
yeah,
motivation, and I get days where I wake up and I'm just feeling really bold,
yeah.
and
I
I'm
love
like,
that though.
I'm gonna do that thing. I'm gonna demand that price from that client. I'm gonna send the set list. I'm gonna, like, this morning I just woke up and I was like, right, it's time. I'm gonna send the EP to the distributor. It's gonna come out
I love
this
that
by
though.
the end of the month, and it's like I've been procrastinating that for a whole month. And I was like, oh, I need to get the right photos. And I just found one that worked from the time that I wrote the songs, quickly made the artwork this morning, submitted it all to the distributor, picked the snippets for the social media. And it was like, oh, and that was actually quite a fun process. It makes me feel really, really accomplished. But you're right, we do like really procrastinate these things. And again, it goes back to that fear of your own potential.
Isn't it funny? Because a lot of people have got the fear of rejection or the fact of people not receiving their art. But I just think it's really interesting because I actually think with art, you know when it's time to put it out because you'll just know. But also that boldness that you talk about, I can like have a call with like a wedding client and I can speak, very insightfully about a subject that I'm an expert at because I've been doing it week in, week out. That boldness comes from knowing your product or what you're doing inside out, but it only comes from when you have been doing that for a while. And I think what you're actually saying is that you do wake up and one day you feel bold and able to do it. But I think that boldness only comes from having done your research, having been feeling really excited about what you're doing. And, because in the end of the day, you are the salesperson for that product. But I do think the boldness comes from life experience. And I don't actually think you should berate yourself for sitting on something for a while because sometimes it's not finished and it's okay for it to not, you're not on anybody else's timeline, you're only on your own.
Mm.
I actually took a little bit of you away, even with this podcast. Like, I finished the registration for the software about 15 minutes before we got on the call. I set up the email address like literally 5 minutes before we got on. I finished uploading the little stinger, the jump right in, 2 minutes before we got on. But
Yeah.
I knew that I needed to show up today because you were here. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like, it's that kind of synergy between friendships and work and life. And that's why I'm really thankful because, even though I've been doing it, a little bit longer than you have, I'm
Mm.
still learning from you and you're powering me completely inadvertently, which is beautiful.
I think like accountability is a huge thing, and it's something that we don't do enough.
Mm,
Um, I've really, really noticed it recently because I've been forging connections with local musicians
yeah.
who
Uh,
perhaps, obviously, there is always an element of competition on the music scene of who's getting what gigs. But I've been forging connections with artists that are like, we're different enough that
yeah.
we could both share a venue. And it's so nice. Like, I just met who I say is now my mate, Paul. We met for a coffee to discuss venues, but then we just went on this big thing about how difficult it is, and you're doing it all on your own.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a whole like community of us who, it's like we're afraid to like talk to each other about how do I, how do I do this, how do I do that, because it's nobody's like, there's
Oh,
not
but it's
really
funny
any
though.
guide out there on how to like be a working musicians.
Are we afraid of it? Because I don't think we are. I think that we just don't have the infrastructure. And I think, you essentially set up a business meeting with somebody to talk about business. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you're not selling to that person and they are a similar person. It's more sort of like the impetus isn't there. I don't think we're afraid to do that at all. I just think we don't necessarily think to do that. But I
Yeah.
think one thing that I love about you especially is that you really do support your grassroots venues. You really do know who the people are, who the bookers, you do try and support other acts and you look at it as an ecosystem. And I think that's the one thing I would say is actually where you are geographically, there is a better, more kind of tighter music community than there is for somewhere like Brighton, which I think is actually quite exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's nice. Like, I felt when I started, I felt very like welcomed into the scene,
Mm,
and there's like certain venues that like everyone starts at. And yeah, I don't know. I just felt like, there was a few people that I reached out to locally when I wanted to start gigging. Like, I reached out to a local, really successful sort of folk pop
mm,
artist called Alex Hart. And I'd seen her loads as a teenager at like a venue and seen her absolutely smash it. And
yeah,
she plays with like Seth Lakeman, for example, and goes on big tours with like Martin Barr. And I was like, how can I do what you're doing? And I think I kind of got that kick to do that from you, Ian, when you actually said at one of the retreats, like, one of the best things you can do is just ask. Find the people that are doing what you want to do successfully and just say, have you got an hour this week that you could meet me for a coffee?
because people want to tell you about their experiences and what they've been through. And
Yeah.
I should actually thank Simon Coulson for that, because when I left my corporate job, I was working for a company that brings retreats and courses together for songwriters, artists, and producers. And he said, if there's one thing that you should do is, potentially reach out to somebody who's doing what you want to do and just take them for lunch or buy them a coffee and just ask them. And because people don't necessarily think of it as like a competitive thing, they
Yeah.
are genuinely flattered that somebody thinks that they are of a worthy enough to give useful information. And it's like, if somebody messaged me and said I need, and people do, more often than not, I'm happy to help because I believe there's enough for everybody. And if we all got a little bit better about supporting each other, that the creative industry, and especially with AI and technology, we need to do that more than ever. But there is enough, the art in the UK, the music industry is one of the only sectors that's actually generating growth. So it's like, there, if it's growing, everybody's got an opportunity in there.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. It's yeah, and it's just such a like basic thing to do. And kind of it's really interesting because I actually had a girl sort of in her late teens.
Yeah,
I did the same thing, and I'm there thinking, this is so weird because that was me a few years ago. And I
yeah.
met up with this girl, and she's like, look, I really love what you're doing, how can I do that? And I'm thinking,
It's if I
I
just,
don't have a bloody clue what I'm doing.
but I think also you don't like say anything other that you'll just figure it out as you go.
Well,
Um,
exactly, yeah. And that's like, for all the complaints that, because it's like the only job almost where we work so hard, and a
mm,
lot of it is like, it's all building foundations for the next thing and the next thing.
yeah,
And like, all hours of the day, like, often me and my partner are like passing ships, and it can just feel like you're
and
just putting in all this effort, and sometimes you're like, where's it all going?
mm,
um but the one, I just wouldn't change how like the freedom of it, and it's like every day is different, and like you never know what new project's going to come your way, or what song might pour out of you that like suddenly you're like you might think that you've got like the most exciting song you've ever written, and then 2 days later like something else comes out, and then I'll
Yeah.
get the boys together, and I'll be like, then we've got drums on it and we've got guitar, and it's like, oh my god, like there's just that feeling is like
Mm.
there's just nothing like it. And then the thought of like then taking that feeling out to a crowd of people, like, and it's really weird because I think something that you do as well once you're doing that is you have a big battle, like, am I just an attention seeker, am I just like a massive ego? But it's almost the opposite of that, because it's not about me, it's about the song, it's like.
But do you find that this ego, and this is really interesting, I think this is misogyny again, because when the word diva is usually used to describe female singers, like Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey,
Yeah,
Adele. But
who
isn't it
knew what they wanted.
interesting, isn't it, that this kind of this misogyny, even in the language, or it's also, when somebody walks up to you and they're like, "Oh, so what's your real job then?" It's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm actually doing this full time, and I'm one of a very, small community of people that are actually, it's probably even bigger than we know, because they don't go around screaming about it all the time. But I don't think that you're necessarily got an ego because you're an artist. But I think, the one thing that I would say that you are teaching me is to remember that I am first and foremost an artist, and it's like, it's okay to step into that space, because all you want to do is amplify your message and share your art with people. That's not taking away from them. They can choose to listen to it or come to your gig and engage with you. It's not like a dictatorship where you're like, you will listen to this, you will.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be really nice to just tie things up with just a little bit about, what do you think is the biggest thing that you've learned on your journey? Your best bit of advice, or the thing that is kind of you wish you'd known?
Ooh.
Put you on the spot.
I think to be patient with yourself and grow at the pace that you need, and like I think the past few years have like really, I was gonna say I'd become, but actually come back to being quite a almost spiritual person, and I think, and I really believe in things working out in certain ways
Yeah.
because they were meant to, and the people that come into your life, like when I met you, and that's just one example. Like I do sometimes wonder where I might be if I hadn't met you. I think I might still be a musician, but maybe I wouldn't have made the space for myself.
I
And so
think
yeah, I
different
think
journey though, wouldn't you? And I think, it's very easy to look back at your life and think, oh, well, what if but I don't think anything would have been drastically different, because I think, like what you say, you were open to those experiences when they came along. And, who knows what might have happened. For example, you might have ended your trip or gone to a different city, but that's not to say that you wouldn't have met somebody kind at the next place, that
true.
you might
Yeah.
have ended up sat next to like a big publisher. You just don't know. But I think you talk about being patient, but I think a lot of that stems from things arriving when they're meant to, and when you're ready to hear them, and when you're ready to receive them. And it's like, I think what you're teaching me too is it's okay to just sit and be with it, and just remove that kind of torment of it's not arrived, where is it, rather than actually sit there at the bus stop and enjoy the music.
Yeah, I think being brave and being bold and going back to like, I'm really thinking a lot lately about really what it is to be a woman in a creative industry, and the things that we carry in our head, like the diva label and stuff. And I think, like, take up space. Like, why not? Have the audacity to like put yourself in those spaces and say,
I want this.
I want this. Yeah. Or I love that. Or I don't like that.
Me happy. It makes me sad. Like,
Yeah.
don't
And
dive
just,
back from it.
and rather than, something that women do a lot is we kind of put softeners in our language to mitigate any possibility of conflict or being perceived
Dimming your light.
as a drama queen or anything like that. And it's like, hang on a minute, I'm in the creative industry. It's like my job to be dramatic. Like, I'm here because I am a romantic and I am passionate. So
Being dramatic is not like, even that's like toxic, because it's like being expressive and being vulnerable and sharing your happiness, your pain, your sorrow with people is not drama. It's actually processing. And we're just totally accused of being woke the whole time, but it's like, unless you do this, somebody needs to hear that song at that moment in their life. They need to hear it, and you need to process an event. Somebody else, that might be the difference between life and death for someone. And I think,
yeah, and it's mad actually how these songs that we write about our little lives can travel so much further than that. And even like for me, like I was talking about the song Statue from the upcoming EP, and I wrote that about a former relationship and feeling like I was on a pedestal, but it's become for me a anthem of being in the music industry and being put on pedestals and feeling like I need to be a product, so. And like my song Take a Minute, people have poured out so much love for that song, about how it's helped them in certain times to be proud of themselves and remind themselves who they are and how they're evolving. And it's just like, I think you should see it less, or for me, I should see it less. We as artists should see it less as like a journey to serve our own ego, which is absolutely not what it is. It's like, it's a service. We're providing a service by capturing very specific moments of the human experience.
it's art.
Bringing it to people who struggle to express that themselves. But and we've only got here because we loved songs in that way and thought, I'd
I
love
mean,
to do that.
you and I talked about, my dad, who was an artist. He never shared his art with the world, and it's one of the saddest things. But the fact is that you will go on to inspire other people, and just by doing what you're doing, and eventually that next person will come and ask you. So in terms of where can people find out more about you? So you're on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best place. So I'm very much moving in a new direction soon, but the first and most exciting thing would be the EP.
Yes.
Streaming platforms, you can find all my music on there. It'll hopefully be a little bit fuller within the next month.
Yeah. Well, how many
which
tracks
is
is
really
on this
exciting.
album?
But yeah, any full band gigs I'll be sharing those on Instagram. They'll be in my bio.
Yeah.
Lots of exciting festivals lined up in the summer in the Southwest as well. So
amazing. Great stuff. So if you know anybody who might be interested in coming on the podcast, you can drop an email to the Wanderers podcast at hotmail.com, and we are on Instagram, _Wanderers_podcast. And yeah, I mean, it's been absolute joy, like talking about my favorite subjects: music, travel, dreams, hopes and passions. And I have a very special place for you in my heart, Kate Hall. So if you haven't checked her out, give her a follow on Instagram. Make sure you have a listen to Statues when it comes out.
Yeah, Statue. Yeah.
The EP. And Kate will be a guest host on a future episode where we're going to swap seats. So I won't have a clue about what she's going to ask me, but I look forward to that. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us and have a good week. Bye.
Thank you for having me.